overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Hey, welcome to What the Franklin. I'm Chip Franklin. Always great to have you here on this Thursday, even though I thought it was Friday for a second. A lot going on. The latest on COVID is not good. We're going to get to that in a little bit. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be joined by the Washington Post's Philip Bump. And Philip's going to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson and his web of conspiracies. This is brilliant, what Fox does, these conspiracies. They really are. And I mean, really, one of them that we start today with, of course, would be COVID and the latest on that. And of course, again, flu. Have you done this before? Because I do this all the time. I tell people, have you gotten your flu shot or have you gotten your COVID booster? And they always, and let me tell you something. My wife got COVID. We had not gotten COVID in 3 years, and it kicked her ass. She's in great shape. I mean, this was 3 weeks ago, and she still has a hard time with taste and smell. And her back was killing her. And that's apparently not unusual, that it affects the muscles in your back and your spine. And so it's taken her a while. So it's nothing to fool around with. It really isn't. Anyway, so that's the latest on that. First of all, thank you again for all of you that subscribe to the show. It's really simple. It's free. If you're on YouTube, you just click right there and boom. It's really easy to do. So we'll get to that. And a little bit later on in the show, too, we'll talk about Trump's big announcement, which is actually pretty funny. If you haven't heard this, he said he had a big announcement today and he made it. And it's actually, it's hilarious. All right. So moving forward, I mentioned this earlier that Marjorie Taylor Greene has lost her mind. But the scary part is that she has a lot of people that believes in her. And this is, she's meeting with McCarthy and other Republicans behind closed doors, plotting 2023. And I look backwards and I look at 2022 and I look at 2020 and what made the difference for the Democrats. And have we learned our lesson? Because when I grew up, the Democrats lent heavily towards social services and seniors, but now there's a whole new group.
The fact that these youth voters are coming in so strong on an off year is very concerning.
Youth voter turnout in Wisconsin, 350% more young people voted this year than the last midterm.
The media is completely allied against us, as is our education system. Democrats really ramped up their totals with the youth vote. For
Fetterman, under the age of 45, voters overwhelmingly turned out for Fetterman, a candidate who is unapologetically progressive, campaigned on marijuana legalization.
And you know what that did? That excited their base. That excited a bunch of young voters that came out in massive numbers.
This was the second highest turnout for young voters in midterm elections in the past 30 years.
So to really change the country, we're going to have to win, and we have to win over voters outside our traditional base. That means young people, too.
So these are issues that have been discussed in politics as progressive, but are really becoming mainstream.
The energy from these young folks is real here. We have seen a very long line.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce the most...
So what is it about young people that Democrats appeal to? I have two sons, 32 and 34, and both of them have no love at all for the Republican Party. Joining us right now is someone who can look into this a little more with a little more detail. He is the youth vote. Let me get this right. He is the youth vote vice president of communications for Next Gen America, which is the nation's largest youth voter mobilization organization. Antonio Ariano is with us here. Antonio, thank you so much for the time. And first of all, let me just back up a little bit and say congratulations to your group and others that did such a tremendous job in 2022.
Thank you so much, Chip. 2022 was just the beginning. I think that we are marking a major shift in American politics, and taking note that the young voting bloc is uniquely positioned to drive transformative change in America. So really excited to be talking about this today.
So when I remember as a kid, I have 4 older sisters who grew up in the 60s and would tell me stories. I mean, the closest in age to me is almost 10 years. So it's a totally different, almost a different generation. What is it today that the Democrats have that are appealing to these young people? Or is it that they're just tired of the old white guy wagging his finger at them?
The reality is that we have the most diverse eligible voting bloc in American history. There's 70 million young eligible voters in America right now between the ages of 18 to 35, and they want big, bold change, right? A couple of things. Number one, young people in America recognize that they're about to inherit a planet that is on the edge of destruction in terms of climate change, and they want big, bold, urgent change to make sure that we are preventing catastrophic destruction that's inevitable and to some extent. But now, because of young people organizing, mobilizing, calling on their senators and congressional reps, the climate agenda has been at the top of congressional priorities, and we saw the Inflation Reduction Act, right? As well, young people care deeply about building a just economic system. Unfortunately, young folks have been on the short end of the economic prosperity in this country. Right now, folks can't afford their rent, can't afford to buy a house, are struggling because they're buried under student debt. And so they recognize that things need to change. And what you're seeing here is an activated, young, motivated base that is ready to take action. And they're organizing and mobilizing like never before. And I think it's important that both political parties take note that this constituency is no longer sitting idly by and allowing older generations to make decisions for their futures.
It's interesting you said student debt, because you're talking, almost $1 trillion, right? I mean, it's big numbers. And the Republicans' response to that was interesting, to say the least. In other words, they opposed it on the trying to appeal to many of their voters who didn't go to college, assuming that those people would say, well, why should you give it to them? Because I didn't get it. And, obviously some of the student debt we're talking about goes to trade school. It's not just liberal arts people studying, cicada sounds, in the forest, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that have this debt that have engineering degrees, that maybe many teachers. And of course, there was actually put into place something that was screwed up in the last 20 years, which was, forgiving much of the debt for student teachers, because we need teachers desperately, And so I guess I think the question I have is that, can in order to keep young people, you have to identify the thing that brought them in, right? So you continue that, and or it could just be a broad appeal, like you said, with climate change and with student debt. But I look at the last 3 years with, the pandemic. Then I look at, the Obama years leading into Trump's fiasco. And I wonder if was it the promise that Obama brought, I think, which was, yes, we can, right? As opposed to Trump, who, had I can't really find a sentence to describe those 4 years, but no, I'm serious. It's like insane. I mean, so what was it about young people? Was it just,
I'll tell you. So I think, Chip, one of the things that we're seeing here is that, to your point, you said, I can't describe what the last 4 years under the previous administration were really about. And what it really was about was injecting extremism into our politics. And for young people who are multiracial, multilingual, they recognize that the threats against LGBTQ communities, against women's rights, these are attacks directly into this core constituency. And so, less than believing in a candidate, young people are deeply resonating with progressive ideals, progressive issues. And now that they see that they've won, that they can deliver tangible change, the Inflation Reduction Act would not have been possible without the consistent organizing of young people. Student debt conversations that are still being had and ongoing, and I know there's litigation, but it's still moving forward, would not have happened without young people. A Supreme Court justice, right? Having Biden in the White House to appoint a Black woman into the Supreme Court would not have happened without, in a large part, young people mobilizing in historic numbers in 2020. So here's what I really think we need to contextualize, right? Historically, the media particularly has painted the youth voting bloc as disenfranchised, as disengaged, as unreliable. But that couldn't be further from the truth. If we
But
look
in the past, they have been.
Right. Well, that's true. But if we look at statistics in the last 4 cycles, if we look at 16, 18, 20, 22, consecutively, young voter participation has increased year over year. This 2018 was the largest youth voter participation in American history. And 2022 was the second largest youth voter participation in American history. So once it's a hiccup, now it's a pattern. And it's a pattern that organizations like NextGen are investing in to consistently turn out, to make sure that we are no longer ignoring or overlooking the power of the youth vote. And let's talk about what youth vote delivered this midterm, right?
Let me back up. Hold on. Let me stop you right there. So you're saying it's not just one thing. It's a combination, right? Like the CR writes right here: body autonomy, not having forced religion, freedom to marry who you want, reading any and all books, concern over the environment, and just a few things young people like. I think that the climate change is one that really caught their attention. I think that you're right. I think that Roe v. Wade had a big part in 2022, right? And I still think that's to come. I think that that might very well be an issue for Democrats for the next decade or more. But we did lose the House, and now we're going to have to listen to 2 years of that BS from people like Beaupert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz. These people like Jim Jordan on the Judiciary Committee moving forward. But I do think in some ways, to your point, it's going to galvanize more attention and interest from young people who see this as somebody setting the plate for their next 30 years and doing it in a way that is unjust, unfair, undesirable, and sadly could get worse if they don't become active.
You talk about Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about losing the House. And I think one of the conversations that we need to have as well is, candidates being able to relate to this core constituency and prioritizing their issues early on, right? So the investment that goes into 18 to 35-year-olds, 18 to 25-year-olds is breadcrumbs compared to the electorate at large. And so what we need to recognize is that there needs to be a sustained investment into this constituency. Now that you see that young voters made were the deciding factor in elections like Fetterman's in Pennsylvania, right? And Warnock's in Georgia. So these in securing the trifecta in Michigan for the first time and a historic victory where we get the governorship and the legislator. All of this points to one thing: you can't ignore young people. And what does that mean? You got to change the way and modernize the way that you do civic engagement. So this last election in October alone, $6 billion went into television ads. I'm sure you all had television ads running like crazy.
Oh, it's disgusting. California.
Yeah. Guess what? Young people are not sitting at home at 6 o'clock watching the news.
Right.
They're getting their information online. At NextGen, we ran the country's largest influencer program on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, to make sure that we were connecting with the core constituency. Politicians, candidates can say they want the youth vote, but what are they doing to actually secure the youth vote is crucial, and it's something that we need to start talking about.
You know, it's funny too. Whenever I see polls and they talk about young people, I go, I don't know one young person, and my son's friends they're around my house all the time, and I talk to them about it, and I don't know one of them that actually would answer a phone from a number they don't recognize. Right? None of them are going to do this, so they have no idea. When you go online, my son's is a huge Reddit fan, right? He goes through these things and he finds stuff as it's happening quicker than Twitter and others. Yeah. As Musk starts to, implode, I guess is the best word I can think of. I wonder, it seems to me we need, at least for us, my generation, we need more Snopes and more truth or fiction. But young people seem ready to do the work. I can't tell you how many times my son comes in with a phone and says, "Hey, Dad, what is this? This is BS, right?" And I go, "Yeah, if if it doesn't seem true, you can do some research. You can, it's not that hard to do. You can go on Google News or others and put the story in, and you'll find somebody coming up and saying, no, this, I mean, COVID is a great example today. We got a great, we're talking more about, COVID kits. Biden is going to start sending out the free testing kits again. And so much of this is disinformation. We're going to talk to Philip Bump from the Washington Post at the bottom of the hour. He's written a great piece yesterday about Tucker Carlson and his conspiracy theories. Young people aren't buying it. Young people aren't buying anything that they're saying. And the last thing here, I guess, that it matters to me. And by the way, we're talking to Antonio Arellano. I get that right? Arellano, yeah. Arellano. Okay, I'm sorry. Again, he is a Youth Vote Vice President of Communications for Next Gen America, and they are the nation's largest youth vote mobilization organization. I guess, to me, the thing to continue to incentivize young people is to empower them on the web to continue to do their push, because, as you said before, they're not home watching television, as much as we may like some of the people that we see at 5:30 and 6. They're just not doing it, man. That dog is dead, right?
Exactly. So what we need is a consistent investment into modernizing. We're speaking to a digital generation. To your point about young people recognize disinformation and misinformation better than anybody else because they've grown up with this technology at their fingertips. They recognize when their legs being pulled, right? And so what we need trusted messengers, and that means influencers, folks that have millions of followers that we can cultivate and work with, partner with, collaborate with to get out our message to that core constituency, 18 to 35-year-olds that are on the precipice of greatness, are really the future of our country, and are ready to take action to make sure that we are preventing extremists from taking our democracy backwards.
Okay. Obviously, we're talking about a diverse group, right? When we're talking about young people, how do we put together a plan to find them? Their diversity is their strength, but it also makes it difficult to put messages in front of them and which platform. We mentioned earlier everything from bodily autonomy to climate change to, I guess part of it is that, when I was a kid, I got to be, I worked on Capitol Hill in high school, and I got to see it. And it was really remarkable to meet and talk to these congressmen, these people in positions of power. These kids don't have that anymore. The young people, they don't have that access to that, but they can go online and they can see people like, I think, Eric Swalwell, who was just, I think, a master at this. Of just, it's not intentional. It's just who he is. He seems to really connect with young people. And you saw it in his district. I think he got 85% of the youth vote in the East Bay area. I just wonder, if there's one key issue that, we have so many of these issues and so many disparate groups, I guess the key issue is just empowerment. Is like, this is your world.
And at Next Gen, we're mobilizing and organizing on college campuses and universities across the country because that's where democracy lives for young folks, right? And so we're connecting with people at historically Black colleges. We're connecting with people at Hispanic serving institutions to meet that diversity need and gap that exists, to make sure that we're connecting and reflecting the future that they want to build. Additionally, I think it's also important that we're creating culturally competent campaigns and recognizing that the formulas of democracy that have worked for the past 50 generations are no longer going to be effective, right? That means investing into a more diverse digital approach, investing into collaborating with athletes and celebrities that also can get out the information and at a quicker pace. And then we got to recognize, Chip, that we're dealing with a national media narrative that just in September, October of this year was saying Democrats have a big problem with young people. Democrats should be worried about the youth vote. And that couldn't be further from the truth. We're now going back to those reporters and saying, were you actually talking to young folks? Because the young people we were talking to at the University of Austin, in Pennsylvania and Michigan were telling us we are excited like never before. Because why? We saw this president deliver on student debt. We saw this president advance the conversation on marijuana. We saw this president invest in climate change. They're listening to us. We know we can deliver tangible change, and we're just getting started. And so what I think 22 was the pregame to 2024. Our organization is mobilizing like never before to make sure that we recognize the very real threat against our democracy in 2024's presidential election. and that we recognize that young people will be the deciding factor once again in that election, and that this time the news cycle doesn't get it wrong, that we don't lead into a conversation about disenfranchising one of the most powerful electorates in the country, that we start to empower, to your point, empower, inspire, motivate, educate, mobilize this base.
You know, getting rid of some of the adjectives there and just trying to get down to exactly that. I think in 2024, what we have to learn is that local legislatures and politicians, because of the way the Supreme Court seems to be going, are the ones that are most going to have most an impact in our lives. I have no doubt that there is a strong inclination in this 6-3 court to say states can ban gay marriage, that states could conceivably ban interracial marriage, giving that 10th Amendment power to these states. And the thing about this is that and you got states like the Dakotas and Montana. Between those three states, you got 6 U.S. senators, and you have, but you have like 14 people and a few coyotes, right? I mean, there is a real opportunity up there to make some, real change in those areas. And many of those people up there don't realize just, what the federal government can do for them. I don't know if you listen to Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, but there was a really interesting podcast about the use of triplicates in writing prescriptions, and how back in the early 90s, before OxyContin, many states put this in play. And a good example of that was you had New York and Massachusetts. In New York, a physician had to write triplicates and keep the third piece and when writing for opioids, right? But then Massachusetts didn't. Compare the deaths. Massachusetts had 30 times the number of opioid deaths. And by the way, just so people understand, in the last 30 years, 1 million people have died because of that. Federal regulations were the only thing that stopped that in those 5 states. And interestingly enough, Texas was one of them, but California, New York, Texas, Illinois, and Massachusetts. So I guess my point is that one of the cool things about young people is beginning to see the power of federal government. The federal government is not this thing that Reagan used to preach against, this thing that you should run from. The world has changed tremendously. Pandemics are just part of it. But we're a world economy now, and if we're not careful, and we don't pay attention, well, again, people talk about inflation here and how bad it is at, whatever the percentage rate is now. But you go to England, it's like 15, 16, 18%. A friend of mine was in Turkey the other day. It's 88% in Turkey. So it's because of and again, trying to explain these issues to young people. I think young people really are invested in learning. It's kind of the whole thing about being a kid, right? I mean, I say being a kid, we're talking 18 to what, 30, 35, something like that. All right. So you guys obviously coming up here in this off year. This is a mobilization year coming up.
Yeah. So we were just talking about that. We were, there is no off year when it comes to activating this base. So we've got to stay committed. We've got to stay engaged. We win 2024 by building the base in 2023. And so that's exactly what we're doing. And two things that I think is important to note here, Chip, is that we're not the only ones. As you noted at the top of your segment here, Republicans took note this election cycle. They said, oh, what is happening here? Young people are voting. And guess what? I'm from Texas. We've got Republicans shaking in their boots in Texas. And nationwide, Republicans are going to start to make a pivot, a more intentional investment into young folks. And so it's important that we recognize that investment is coming from these mega donors in the Republican side that are going to make a concerted effort to win over the future of this country. And we need to recognize that is a real threat. So continuing to invest to fund democratic, progressive institutions and organizations that are going to cater to the youth vote, that are going to build the infrastructure needed, like we have been doing for the past 10 years, to mobilize this core constituency is crucial. This battle is brewing and it's just getting started now that folks recognize the full power and potential of this untapped gold mine that is the youth vote. And I think that Next Gen is uniquely positioned to be at the front of the lines. We invite folks, your viewers, to join us in this movement. We can't do it alone. We're an army of 28,000 volunteers, phone banking, text banking, canvassing on the field, on the ground, online, trying to mobilize and activate the country's largest eligible voting bloc.
Yeah. I mean, the two areas I think that are hardest for us, Antonio, and I really appreciate your time here. Thank you so much for being with us. I think one is pot. I mean, I know young people are tired of seeing these still draconian laws in many states. If there was another one, it would probably be education, and just, the student debt issue, and being able to have a secure future for them, jobs, you hear this time and time again. Yeah, the Republicans are going to lean into the youth vote, but they'll do it with lies and obfuscation. They'll try to tell us that the Democrats want to take these things away. So we have to reward those who embrace our ideals. And I think one way of doing that would be to listen to them. I mean, and young people are calling for a lot of change. And one of them has to just do with pot. I mean, simply the fact that Biden and Obama and nobody has changed the certificate. What is it? I'm trying to say the certification of pot as a class 1 drug. It's not up there with methamphetamine. Come on, So that's a simple thing, and that's a small thing, but I think that would be like opening up the dam for young people to say, okay, they're taking it seriously now.
Yeah, and it would be life-changing for so many people that are incarcerated or that have a criminal background because of this, really ludicrous legalist law that tries to dilute the future of people. And as we know, it's also based on race. Let's be real. If there's a real,
without a doubt,
undertone of racism when it comes to marijuana. And you're right. Young people care deeply about this issue and are going to continue to champion the issue until we have marijuana legalization nationwide.
You kicked ass, man. Thank you so much for being here. I want to stay in touch with you, and everybody should on Twitter. You can find them at NextGenAmerica. Follow them and keep track of their movement forward. Antonio Arellano. I get that right?
Yeah. Thank you, Chip.
I grew up in a Salvadoran neighborhood, and I should be better at it, but time passes. Anyway, be well, my friend. Thank you so much. All right.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. All right. So great interview. Great, nice, really nice guy. And when you look at things like this is an interesting point. I would argue this is from one of our listeners, Nick. I would argue the quality of education has declined with the spread of certain technologies, cell phones and social media. That's entirely possible, right? And we'll get to that. But I'm going to go back to my other point. I do believe that the Republican Party will make a real strong push at trying to get young people, and probably doing it in a way that involves outright lies, but also some of the vulnerabilities that the Democratic Party has, and they do. And some of that is just, they'll make these promises. And then when it comes down to actually having to deliver on it, they'll need, and this is politics, they'll need something else. But if you really think that the future of your party is tied to young people, then that's where it is. And you really have to pay attention. All right. The latest on COVID, as I sniff, as you've seen the numbers of flu, COVID, CRV, the others. The thing about COVID that people just don't get, well, maybe I know you guys probably do, but vaccines were never intended to keep you from getting COVID. Vaccines are there to lessen the severity of the infection. And that's it. So when you have this conversation with people, so this is the latest news, and this just came out this morning.
The Biden administration is relaunching the website to order free COVID tests. Eyewitness News reporter Mark Robles live in the newsroom with the details on this. Mark.
Yeah, Rachel, good morning. Take this as yet another sign that COVID-19 is not behind us. The Biden administration planning to relaunch that website for ordering those free at-home rapid tests. Shipping would begin next week. The reopening of the website comes as COVID cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are all on the rise post-Thanksgiving, though all three metrics are still lower than they were this time last year, the beginning of the Omicron surge. The newest booster shot has also seen minimal interest. This COVID test program is a partnership with the U.S. Postal Service. The program has been shut down for about 3 months after officials said they needed to hold on to the remaining supply of tests for a potential wave this winter. It first launched in January when President Biden pledged to give out 1 billion free rapid tests to combat the Omicron surge. More than 600 million at-home tests had gone out to households across the nation by the time the program was halted. Now, starting today, each household will be able to order 4 at-home rapid tests online at covidtest.gov. Meantime, we are expected to learn more about where Los Angeles County stands regarding cases and the possible return of an indoor mask mandate in a public health briefing set for this afternoon.
So this show originates in San Diego, California. So Southern California, on the color chart with red being the worst, we're deep, dark red. And there's a certain irony of that because, I mean, I live in San Diego. I can be outdoors about 360 days a year. Those other 5 days it rains. And so, I mean, obviously the safety here in California different than the upper Midwest. I have good friends right now in Minneapolis, my closest friends, and they're not going anywhere outside. It's a wind chill of like 0 or something. So I guess the point is the winter, it's going to be the same situation we've experienced before, and it's frightening. COVID, again, watching how hard it was on my wife, who is in tremendous shape, right, and seeing the effects of other people, her close friends in that circle. I mean, I just knock on wood. I keep waiting for me to get it. And I was sleeping next to her when she was coughing and everything. So I didn't get that. And that's really unusual. Excuse me, not quite as unusual as many people think. The truth is that somewhere like 30 to 40% of couples where one person gets it, the other person doesn't. And, I would love to get, some sort of DNA test to find out if in fact I was infected. But, I'm not sick right now, and that part's good. All right, I mentioned earlier that, again, by the way, please, if you're listening, tell other people about this show. I'm going to keep doing this show, and I do believe that we will eventually, reach the kind of success necessary. We get, a few thousand people a day that watch this. It'd be great, and it's replayed oftentimes in different areas, and it's all over YouTube and Twitter, blah, 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 blah. But, I'm just doing this because, I've done it for so long, and I really appreciate and I enjoy talking to you guys. And I love talking to my guests. Again, Philip Bump, who will be with us in just a couple minutes. Hopefully, he was supposed to be here just a second ago. Hopefully, when we do this, that you guys, spread the word and tell other people as well. Yeah, he'll be here in just a second. All right. This is another story that just popped out. I saw this yesterday, and I just couldn't imagine what it could be. The former president, 45, he teased a major announcement, a new Donald Trump announcement coming out. You know what it was? I freaking kid you not. The Donald Trump digital trading card collection. Dude needs some money. The guy is broke. Anyway, he made this revelation on True Social last night. Early today, noting these cards will cost $99 each. And he told his followers they are great Christmas gifts. Here's the tweet that he did on True Social. Major announcement. My official Donald Trump digital trading card collection is here. These limited edition cards featuring amazing art of my life and career. Collect all of your favorite Trump digital trading cards. Very much like a baseball card, but hopefully much more exciting. Seriously, this is real. Go to collecttrumpcards.com and get your cards now. Only $99 each. Would make a great Christmas gift. Don't wait. They will be gone, I believe, very quickly. I don't know how we got to this point where all this happened, that this is our world now. But this is our world. And I fear that the party that embraces him, I started the show talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene is meeting with Republicans. She said anywhere from 15 to 20 Republicans. They're meeting and frequently, didn't say how often, in Kevin McCarthy's office with, I guess, the intent being to sabotage whatever's going on in the Democrats' plans for 2023. And I think part of this is that when I think about, what the Democrats are capable of, what the Republicans are capable of, I immediately jump to people like, Greene or Beaupert or Gates. But the truth is, it still comes down to House leadership. And it comes down to, McConnell in the Senate as they move forward. McConnell, even though he does, Trump attacks him now, and he will occasionally say things about him, he's definitely not opposing him. And you're not seeing that in the Republican Party at all, other than Liz Cheney. If Liz Cheney runs for president, and I hope she does, and DeSantis runs for president, we could find ourselves in a really unusual situation where you have for the first time in I want to say since Rutherford B. Hayes, but I might be dating myself. But I think it was Hayes, the first time a presidential election has gone to the House of Representatives. And right now, and when it goes to the House of Representatives, the votes are not by the people of that state. It's by the legislatures of those states. And in 26 of the 50 states, that's one state advantage, or actually two. In 26 of the 50 states, the legislatures are run by Republicans. So back to what I was talking to with Antonio Arianos is that you have to get into these state legislatures, and you have to let them know that you live right down the street. I mean, that really does work. That threat that you live right down. I don't mean by intimidation and by violence, but I just mean that again, this whole idea that when Kavanaugh had people standing outside his home and screaming at his home, that somehow politicians should be safe from not the physical attacks like happened with Pelosi and her husband, but just the ability of people to come up and say, "I think you're full of shit." I just think what you're doing is wrong for our nation. And that's kind of where we are. So this is a really crazy story that Philip Bump wrote. And I guess the real question is when you talk about conspiracies, who's better at this than Tucker Carlson?
The point of mandatory vaccination is to identify the sincere Christians in the ranks, the free thinkers, the men with high testosterone levels, and anyone else who does not love Joe Biden, and make them leave immediately. It's a takeover of the U.S. military.
That look was awesome. Here's the thing about a conspiracy, okay, is that especially when you're talking about something like COVID. COVID is a novel coronavirus. We've never seen it before. And when people say that it was created in a lab and you say there's no proof for that, they'll say, prove it. And that's the way they think. And that's how conspiracies take over. I mean, you can go back to, in our lifetime, well, my lifetime, for Oswald, and then you start going through and Timothy McVeigh, and then remember the Y2K, and then there in every area of time, we're ripe for this. Social media made it easier. The loneliness of the pandemic, the fact that we're all ensconced in our homes watching these little television sets, made us even more ripe. Joining us right now is Washington Post writer, reporter extraordinaire, Philip Bump, who's put together a piece chronicling Tucker Carlson's embrace, I guess, of these conspiracies. Hey, Philip, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Although we just talked about COVID, and that, my wife have you had COVID yet?
I haven't. No,
I haven't either. Yeah, and my wife had it bad, and her back still hurts, and she still can't taste, and it's been 3.5 weeks. So, and she's in great shape. And we don't even know how she got it. We have an idea, but anyway, that was one of the conspiracies. That to hear Beaupert and Fauci and Beaupert and Greene and Jordan and others say or Rand Paul, they're going to bring Fauci and they're going to go after him. I've asked many virologists and epidemiologists and all, what do they have on it? And they say they have nothing. They have that one comment he said early in the pandemic about masks, and that's pretty much it. But when you were putting this together and you were looking at Carlson specifically, his embrace of many of these conspiracies, is it simply just because it's good television?
It's hard to say, right? Look, Tucker Carlson's not a stupid person.
No, I used to know him, Phil, back in the day in DC.
Right. Yeah. He's not a dumb guy. Something happened. Either he figured out that he could make a career out of elevating this nonsense, or he realized that he could get power by elevating this nonsense, or he somehow got subsumed into this reality, this alternate reality in which these things are presented as accurate and necessarily true. I don't know which it is. I think that he has learned that he can approach his job at Fox News in a very particular and loosely structured way that allows him to be very emotional and put a lot of energy into what it is that he's doing to get his viewers really engaged and excited about it. that is completely undetached from reality. And I think, whether or not he realizes it's undetached from reality is one thing, but I think he very much is about exploiting emotion and anger as part of his job, and sees that as the way that he's successful.
When you talk about conspiracies, I mean, I've talked to many psychologists and just people that have for a living have studied the way the brain works in large groups. And I think the thing about it is, I mean, when I was a kid, right, there was a thing called NICAP, the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena. They studied UFOs. It was an Air Force project. And so I was about 9 or 10. And I had my sister's Polaroid camera, and I was in the backyard, and I was throwing a trash can up in the air and taking pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it down to my local paper, the Alexandria Gazette. You probably remember it. You ever heard of that paper, the Gazette? Or is it still
not that I
okay?
recall.
Anyway, yeah, you're not in the DC area right now.
Right.
But anyway, and they published it, and they talked about it. But the guy did the story about how easy it was to make people think there were flying saucers up there. So I was a 10-year-old, and I was like, and I'm in the newspaper, and I thought to myself, well, that wasn't hard.
Right.
And I actually had people that thought this came up to me and said, was it really a flying saucer? And they made you say that, that kind of thing. I think that when we talk about COVID, when we talk about the big lie, when, again, we go back to 2016, Democrats have been accused of this, with the quote unquote Russia hoax, right? Despite the preponderance of evidence. And, again, some of it being coming out of Eric Trump's mouth saying we get all our money from Russia, right? Looking back over this, when, because Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity have no interaction with anybody who disagrees with them, they can pretty much espouse anything. And I just wonder if they realized going into this, the reciprocal sort of, or not, the damage that this would cause to a large system of belief systems in this country toward authority figures. I mean, look at Fauci. I mean, right. I don't understand that pushback by Paul and others.
Well, I think you're getting causality backward, right? It's not that they attacked Fauci and then they did incidental damage to elite and authority figures. They were attacking elites and authority figures. That's who they were going after from the first place. And that's why it was easy for them to attack Fauci. That's the entire predication for Donald Trump's career in politics was these elites are the bad guys. These authority figures are the bad guys. Put your trust in me and put your trust in yourselves. And, we'll do this together. That's been the sales pitch from, basically from June 2015 on. And that's what Laura Ingram's leveraged. That's what Tucker Carlson's leveraged. I mean, if you look at Tucker Carlson's, his broadcast, and the Times did a great analysis of this, that's what he's pitting us against them. And them are, in addition to non-white people, in addition to other marginalized groups, they are the elites, the so-called elites into which, you and I, who are far less powerful and far less rich than Tucker Carlson, would both fall, right? We are the elites simply because we are not, directly aligned with that side. And so the part of the reason that they go after Fauci is because he is an elite that they could target. That's why Donald Trump, beginning of the pandemic, listening to Fauci, going along with it, very quickly realizes he's got to get the economy back on track if he wants to win re-election, has to come up with a reason why he did these things and points to Fauci, scapegoats Fauci, makes Fauci the bad guy, and it's stuck. It's not because of Fauci, it's because of the position he held.
But there's something about conspiracies and social media that are a perfect fit.
Sure.
I mean, I remember back in the 90s, I had a friend who used to talk about the Fed as being part of the Illuminati. And I remember, diving deep into the Fed and trying, because it was like, I don't know, in my 30s, I didn't really know what the Fed did, to be honest with you, entirely. Right. And I started listening to some of these, this New World Order stuff that we heard in Bush 41 and then through the 90s. And this idea that these people are all meeting in these secret, cabals and putting together policy for, the one. I mean, some of the stuff makes people feel good. I mean, not all conspiracies are about frightening people. And I think that when I look at Tucker Carlson, he's the de facto leader of this because, of Fox. I mean, there's others that would like that position, but he does it with such sincerity and such aplomb. I got to admit that he's really good at it.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, I think there's a couple of things here. The first is your point about social media is well taken. I think that the answer there is fairly straightforward, which is that conspiracy theories thrive on agreement, right? They thrive on either agreement in the form of you found evidence, or they thrive on agreement in the form of you find sympathetic characters. The thing I always like to say about the internet, the example I like to use of how the internet empowers small groups is, furries. You probably know what a furry is. It's someone who dresses up as an animal, maybe, likes to get sexual satisfaction out of it. Furries existed before the internet, but the internet allowed them to organize, and now there's conventions of furries. They found each other out there, right? And so what we find is that happens true with conspiracy theories. And it's very easy. You put out a conspiracy theory, it's very, very easy on social media in particular to find people who agree with you and who'll provide additional evidence to support that conspiracy theory. It's very much a breeding ground for organizing around things that are total nonsense, as well as for things that are just generally odd. And so, we see that sort of broadly with social media. And you're right that Tucker Carlson is very good at it. He amplifies these things because he's trying to tear down a system of power that he disagrees with. And so he does what he says these things, whether or not he believes them, but that's fundamentally what his target is.
I remember as a kid telling somebody that the reason we call Native Americans Indians is because Columbus thought he was in India, and it just kind of stuck. Right. We're so lazy, wouldn't change the name over 400 years. But I mean, and in some cases, though, it's, Elon Musk had insinuated that Pelosi, the attack on Pelosi's husband, had something to do possibly with some of these rumors going around. And then, his call to prosecute Fauci. Twitter has turned into something that had some sort of regulations and some. I mean, Rex Chapman, a friend of mine, has like 20 people now pretending to be him, saying horrible things.
Right.
And, at some point, it seems to me that these lies intentionally laid out could reach a critical mass. And maybe that's what January 6th was. Maybe that was the critical mass, or maybe not. Maybe it's still to come. It's still frightening. And I mean, did you come to any kind of conclusions putting this together? Because I know you get hate mail when you write this stuff too. I mean, we all do. But did you come to any conclusions about, where this is headed? Is there a natural burnout here at some point?
I mean, since 2010, Joe Biden's been saying that the fever is going to break, right? The fever hasn't broken. You're right. I think January 6th was distinct in part because there was a very specific point in time in a very specific place that could be the center of that energy. One of the nice things about all this furor being online is that those things don't exist. You do get a lot of harassment. You do get a lot of people saying nasty, aggressive things. That's obviously different than someone hammering down your door and, trying to burn your house down, that sort of thing. So I guess you could call it good from that standpoint. As long as there aren't those triggering moments, Donald Trump bringing a bunch of people to a particular place at a particular time to do a particular thing, I think we can avoid that. But what we see is, what people like to sort of collectively call stochastic terrorism, where there are these isolated incidents where people reach out. And that's really the challenge, is that in addition to people who fervently believe these things, you also have a lot of people who are legitimately mentally ill. I've spoken with experts about this in the past. There's a guy in Staten Island who people don't really know this story, but he went up and he actually murdered a mob boss on Staten Island. He pretended to be a cop and killed the mob boss, and they arrested him for it, obviously, and they were trying to figure out what his motivation was. Turns out he's a QAnon guy, and he believed that this mob boss was part of the QAnon conspiracy, and he took a gun and went and killed this dude, a mob boss, right? Like, that's not messing around. I mean, look at the Paul Pelosi guy, right? We don't know the extent to which he may be mentally ill. He doesn't strike me as being a totally rational actor, right?
No.
But what happens is these people have these illnesses, and then they latch onto things that are in the public attention. They used to call it Truman Show syndrome, where people thought they were the center of the TV show because that movie was popular. They don't see that as much anymore because the movie's not popular anymore. People latch on to things, and so they start talking about, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to deal with it like this. And so this guy in Staten Island latched on the mob boss. This guy in California may have latched on to Paul Pelosi, and that amplifies the danger because it's not just these weird terror cells in Michigan that are, taking up arms. It's also people who are legitimately mentally ill whose attention are drawn to these things for political reasons.
I interviewed the owner of that it was Atomic Pizza. I can't remember the name in Northwest, where the kid showed up.
Right.
Yeah, looking for the basement full of pedophiles. And he said that the guy, and the funny part about this, it's not really funny, but for those of you who don't remember Pizzagate, the guy showed up with a rifle and a handgun, looking for what he thought would be a pizza parlor, that in the basement, Hillary Clinton and others were having sex with children and drinking their blood. And you know what stopped him? Is when the owner said, "We don't have a basement." And he was like, "Oh." So that one little thing crumbled the whole part, you know. And
but you know what he said then, which was a sort of fascinating quote that I think has been sort of unrecognized. He said, "I got bad intel." That was what he said. He blamed he identified the fact that he had been basing this on information that was wrong, right? And so he actually admitted that, like, okay, like this stuff that's out there is wrong. And I think that sort of gets under-recognized, that he had been led to believe this thing because of this nonsense, which, you know, seems obvious, but he pointed to it, and I think that's worth elevating.
Well, I mean, I've said this a couple of times, you know, with what Marjorie Taylor Greene said the other day at the Young Republicans event. Was frightening, you know, saying that had her and Bannon run this attack on the Capitol, they would have been armed and it would have had a different ending. And you had people responding. And then, of course, I can't play this enough.
Today on a radio show, Mr. Trump warned that there would be, quote, big problems if he's indicted in the classified documents case.
If it happened, I think you'd have problems in this country, the likes of which perhaps we've never seen before. I don't think the people of the United States would stand for it.
Oh, you know, by the way, you saw it was a big announcement today, didn't you?
Oh, I just had a piece file on it. Yeah.
For those that missed it earlier, he's got basically trading cards.
That means worse. It's NFTs. I mean, trading cards are really something tangible.
Oh, right. These are the ones
potentially. These are digital. Yeah.
It doesn't. Hopefully, it's not by that Bankman guy, right? No.
Right. No, I don't think he's doing much right now.
No. Anyway, so obviously, you know, I think the thing about you know, your take on this, and people should check it out again. Philip Bump, go to the Washington Post. It was, I think you did it Tuesday. Is that right? This piece? Yeah. About Tucker Carlson and conspiracies. It's obviously you're going to be rewriting that again in some form over the next months, years as we move forward. And I guess the thing that I'm always going to remember and is that we, you know, we have an opportunity now as sane people to stand up to others like opportunists. That's all I can think of Carlson is, and to Fox News. I mean, obviously at some point their numbers will wane, but I don't know. I really don't know moving forward. But great stuff, man. As always, I really appreciate your time, pal. Okay, thank you. Again, Philip Bump from the Washington Post. Check it out. All right, great comments today, everybody. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, again, thank you, John. You made me remember Pizzagate. So did I miss anything that I wanted to tell you guys? Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot more stuff, but it'll be covered by my good friends, Mark Thompson, and of course, the one and only Nikki Maduro, who joins us here. Her show kicks off in a couple hours. How's your little girl? She good?
She's doing really good. You know, it's one of those things. Any parent out there knows if you have a sick kid, when they start looking better, your day is just so much better.
Well,
you used to tell me you're only as happy as your most unhappy child, and I always remember that saying. And so I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling good.
That's my wife's saying. So yeah, I bet it's true. We anyway, it fascinates me. You know, you saw the thing we were talking about with Trump. It's a big announcement.
Oh, the trading cards. I'm starting with that. I mean, I want to know how the conversation goes, not just in his mind, but with the people around him. Like, he's like, I've got it, people. I'm going to get into the trading card and NFT business. It's laughable. It is laughable. And I will laugh during my show about it.
You know, you know, as we move forward here, you know, we were talking earlier about the youth vote, you know, and just how, you know, what a tremendous opportunity it is for Democrats, but it's also an opportunity for Republicans if the Democrats drop the ball. And we have that capability. Whoa, we totally do. And, you know, and I think right now we should start with pot. I mean, the Joe Biden should remove marijuana from
absolutely.
Drug,
absolutely.
Right
it's way past due. It is way past due. And I think that there is the American support for it. Poll after poll shows. I mean, you're seeing state after state, either medicinally or recreationally approve marijuana. And if you remove that restriction or that classification, more research can go into marijuana. I mean, there could be uses for it that we don't even know about, but we can't study because, you know, obviously it still has that classification at the federal level.
Well, I mean, I don't smoke pot, but I will take the occasional gummy, right?
Yeah.
Mostly to sleep. You know, sometimes it only has like 2 grams of THC in it, which is, I mean, that's essentially like staring at a sunset worth going to sleep. It's not very strong at all. But I do like the opportunity, you know, that if I wanted to smoke a joint, I could. I mean, you know, I could I could drink a bottle of vodka and get in a car, and there's absolutely nothing stopping me until,
Exactly. I mean, I understand, because do we need to add more substances, legal substances that alter the mind and could lead to accidents? I understand it. I can understand the influence on kids, but I'm sorry. I smoked more pot when I was underage than I ever did as an adult. So it's just, well, I don't think that's true, but I don't really smoke pot anymore. It's not anything that I necessarily need to do. And I think as a society, we need to get over it and allow personal responsibility, especially with something like marijuana. I know opioids and there's other harder drugs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a little bit of weed.
Yeah. But obviously all the others, with Roe and student debt and with young people, it's interesting, and I could talk about that every day, because I just think that
Oh yeah.
when I look at my son and Alex especially, he is very cynical, and Will just hates Trump.
I would be too. I would be cynical if I was in my 20s and I'm looking to the older generation. I'd be like, what the hell did you do? You did not set us up for success. You did not set up this country for the next generation to be successful. You didn't. Wages have been stagnant. Housing is unaffordable. The job market switches on the dime. There's no loyalty to your workers. I mean, I would be cynical. And I don't know. I mean, the next generation is going to have to kick out all the old farts in Washington, because I don't know how change is going to happen.
Right. And I think, but, again, some of the change has to happen incrementally. You just can't do it overnight. I mean, this is obviously the problem with inflation. It's a macro worldwide problem. I was watching West Wing last night, and they were talking about inflation. So it was probably, I don't know when that show came out. My gut is it came out
ago.
Like 1990, 91, 92.
I know you turned it on. You turned me on to it way after it was over. So
okay, right.
Don't ask me.
But they were talking about inflation. They said, what is the president's plan for inflation? And I was laughing, because here it is 30 years later. And here's the plan for inflation, right? Is to slow the growth of the ability of banks to lend money to other banks, right? And higher rates, so they can't lend more of that out. So people will slow down. People will stop spending as much. Prices will then come down. It's not freaking brain surgery. The only way to get prices down is to slow demand. The only way to slow demand is by obviously making it harder to borrow money to do. And I know for people, and this pisses me off, is when I watch the news, especially national news, especially those that are sympathetic, I know, to the left, and they don't explain exactly what I just said now. People have no idea what inflation. When they go, oh, Biden and fixed inflation, I go, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Can you just go and do a little bit? But is that too much to ask? Apparently it is.
Well, I mean, I think, the only tool that the Fed has in its tool belt or whatever, of course, is, the interest rates. But I'll also say there's a lot of people that hold most of the country's wealth. That is a huge problem, because even if you use all of these tricks and economics, there's still this disparity that leaves so many people behind.
Tax billionaires. I mean, you got to tax them.
Exactly. They've got the money. Why are you taxing the poor people? They don't.
I know you got your show's coming up, but last thing I'm doing a video today on one of my crazy videos, right, about UFOs. And I know the funny part is that they came out with a new report today about, I don't know if you saw the government report saying, hey, it's mostly weather balloons, and it's, it might be some other aircraft from other nations.
There's usually an explanation for it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when you're flying in a jet going 480 miles an hour and 800 miles an hour, if you're pushing Mach 1, and you look out your window, you're going to see light from something bouncing off something else, and it's going to appear to be something that it's not. I'm just saying that, again, when you hate this when I do this, and so does Wendy, my wife, when I try to explain to people just the vastness of this solar system and this universe, the idea that they're going to come down here and just fart around with us like that.
They are. You're dumb if you don't think that they have been here. You know how I feel about this.
I know you're basically Tucker Carlson about UFOs.
I am not. I believe. Hi, Justin. Okay, so coming up on my show, we're going to talk Trump. We're going to talk birth control, that wackadoo judge. has kind of thrown the first shot at kind of banning or putting restrictions on birth
I don't
control.
know that story. What's that story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to mispronounce the judge's name, but he's a Christian judge. He literally goes out and starts talking about how he wants to raise his daughters under the Christian values. You're a judge. Keep your religion out of the court. So we'll delve into that. It's a big day. I don't know if you noticed. I have merchandise now, Chip Franklin.
You have merchandise.
So I'm selling. I'm going to send it to you. You have to tell me what you want. Do you want to rock one of my cups or a T-shirt? And I'll send it to you for Christmas.
Yeah,
I'll send it to you. So you put a cup of whatever in there for you.
I'll hold it right up to the mug.
There you go. So that's what we're doing. Maybe I should do trading cards, though. I mean, those might be very popular. Maybe I should just start selling for like $100 like Trump. It's just a great deal, but it'd be my mug.
Okay, I was thinking of doing bath towels to clean your dog off with. Chip Franklin dog cleaning.
Just your head. You
Very
can
niche.
make those towels with your head all over it. Now that I would buy.
Well, you know, back when I was at WBAL in 1999 and Y2K was coming, they printed out, and I still have a few, about, I'm not kidding, 1,000 rolls of toilet paper with my picture on it, right? And in fact, there were jokes all the time, like Mayor O'Malley, who hated me with the mayor of
how
Baltimore.
funny.
But yeah, so it was like, that was a swag. I thought maybe, for like $5, you could buy a roll of toilet paper with my face on it and give it to
I'm
people.
sure
that hate me,
it'd sell like hotcakes. I'm
Right?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. You
Anyway,
should do it.
so that's all coming up on your
Yeah,
show.
exactly.
Okay.
Starting at noon on YouTube.
All right, the one and only. And hey, by the way, subscribe to both our channels. when you
Yes,
do that.
please. What the
Do that.
Franklin and Nikki Maduro. There
All
you go.
right.
And Mark Thompson, too, who
All
Kim
right.
is filling in again. So there you go.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's why she's not here.
Mhm.
All right.
All
See you,
right.
bad girl. All right. Bye. All right. Again, that is Nikki Maduro, my good friend, and yours too. Again, thank you so much for being here, everybody. This is obviously, we do this every day, 9 to 10. There might be a time change for me coming in the future. I hope not. But right now, we're 9 to 10. Keep in touch. You can email me at chip@chipfranklin.com. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter. I love that. But mostly subscribe here and tell your friends, will you? Thanks. See you then.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can. Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f is wrong with you?